Welcome to the Dark Mind Podcast. All right, friends and familiars. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Dark Mind Podcast, where we explore the boundless realm of dark literature and film. On today's show, I have a multi-award-winning author, editor, and publisher known for her work across poetry, horror, dark fantasy, and splatterpunk. She's joining me today to discuss her new short story collection entitled Demons in My Bloodstream. So without further ado, join me as we delve into the dark insight of Candace Nola. All right, friends and familiars, we are live on YouTube, Twitch, Trovo, and X with Candace Nola talking about her new short story collection entitled Demons in My Bloodstream. Well, Candace, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me on this 28th day of August 2024. You are a huge name in the writing community, and I had the distinct pleasure of meeting you in person at the Texas AuthorCon, where I got to sit in on a splatterpunk panel that you were a panelist on, as well as watch you present an award to the great Joe R. Lansdale. Your short story collection, entitled Demons in My Bloodstream, had something for everyone's dark predilections. From a young man's determination to violently overcome a medical condition, to a young woman becoming too immersed in her work, the stories are unique and fantastically disturbing. So I really enjoyed them, and I'm honored to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Well, so let's see here. The collection starts with a poem that sets the tone for the entire collection. And I know, I think I remember seeing that you had some poetry in the past. It felt like you were describing the ideas and inspiration for your stories personified as demons. What idea and tone were you intending to set for the collection with that poem? Or am I way off?
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
So most of the collection was written about a year and a half before that poem was written. And they actually had nothing to do with each other. But when I was going through my work for the collection called Unmasked that I released in June of 2023, which is my poetry. It was one of them, but when I read it over and was asked to put the collection together, I kind of felt like that would be a perfect way to start it, because oddly enough, it went along with much of what I had written about, even though when I wrote the original poem itself, it had nothing to do with it. So just kind of worked out that way.
Yeah, kind of, what did Jung call that? Synchronicity, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful synchronicity. Well, your first story, It's So Pretty, is about a young man named Stanley who has a rare form of color blindness called, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, is it tritanopia?
I think so.
Tritanopia? Okay, we'll go with that. Resulting in him living in a monochrome world. His mother tried to show him different hues of black, white, and gray, but Stanley wasn't interested. He was perfectly fine existing in straight up black and white. And I've noticed that the covers of your books are very colorful, very vivid, very vibrant. Horror authors, I've noticed, often write about what they fear. So, assuming that you are a fan of the vivid colors on your covers, is being colorblind a particular fear of yours? And if so, could you tell us about it?
No, it's not. But I like the idea of it. And I actually got the idea from one of my children.
Oh, yeah?
And it just kind of sparked this whole, but what if one day he could suddenly cure himself, but in just the worst way imaginable?
Don't try this at home, people.
Yeah. But me being me, it also had to have a point, and it had to have that emotional, like, pull to the entire story. It couldn't just be, hey, here's this guy and he's going to do this and we're going to go through this with him, but you're not going to really feel anything. Like, I wanted you to feel something as you went through the story and as you watch what happened to him at the end, even though it's a pretty horrific ending.
Yeah, I don't know if I can say this without giving away a spoiler. But can I say the color that he saw, not how it came about? Mm-hmm. Okay, so the color red, bullfighters use red silk, red tarp, whatever that is, because it makes the bull angry, something about that color. And it seemed like in the story that was tied in with anger. So was anger kind of like the activating thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I used red because it's sort of a known fact in a way that when somebody gets extremely angry, pushed over the edge, they kind of black out, gray out, but they see, like, mentally, they can actually see the red, like that red just kind of takes over, which is why a lot of people say that phrase, I was so angry, I saw red. It's because you get flushed and you get hot and your brain just starts to fire off. And that's like the one thing that people associate with anger and madness. But what else do we associate with red? Blood and pain. And so it just seemed to work, because if there was anything that I wanted him to be able to suddenly get a glimpse of, it was red, because red just means a whole variety of things that I could work into the actual story, because red also means love and lust and passion and all of that. So you have all of that just in there.
So why do red cars, why are they, or red trucks possibly too, why are they ticket magnets? They always tell you that.
Attention.
Okay.
And usually if it's a bright red, a lot of more expensive car manufacturers use that particular red. So if it's red, chances are it's a sports car. It's a very expensive sort of vehicle. And also when you're flying down the highway and the cops are waiting, they're going to see the red faster than they're going to see the white, the gray, the yellow. They're going to see that red though.
I know I'm going off in the weeds here by saying this, but I used to own a Honda Civic, a 2-door. It was a 4-cylinder, but my insurance was higher because it was only 2 doors, so that classified it as a sports car. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a little ridiculous. Yeah. Well, circling back to the book, when Stanley stumbles across some of his mother's makeup, he finds that she had some very vivid, vibrant shades of red hidden away, in contrast to the gothic shades of black that she normally wore. And Stanley realizes that she gave up her bright colors, even though he never asked her to. So was it more about her feeling like she didn't have the right to enjoy the colors if her son couldn't, or was there some other reason?
She went with the whole, well, if he can't, then we can't. And she had this hope that she sort of clung to her whole life, that there was going to be a cure. And one day he was going to be like everyone else and they were going to fix him. And until then, she didn't want him to live a lie either. She wanted his world, whenever he woke up or was fixed, what he saw his whole life was what he saw. The black and the white house. Everything was black and white. Everything was gray. She didn't want him to someday have that cure and find out that his life was a lie and everything around him was just bright yellow and green and pink and purple and blue. And it was a weird sort of, if he can't be this way, then we can't be this way until he is. Okay. Sort of overprotective, over sheltering.
Yeah. I wanted to get into that a little further into the show. Mm-hmm. Let me take just a second to say hello to our live stream viewers. Looks like we have about four on YouTube, one on Twitch. Yeah, 4 on YouTube, 1 on Twitch. And Sally says, hey there. So let me say, hey there.
Hi, Sally.
Back at you. All righty. Well, as Stanley recalls his childhood, we find that his mother, Doris, went to great lengths to insulate him from the outside world, as you were just talking about, to control his environment so that everything seemed normal. But as we find out later in the story, the problem was he didn't have any social skills. And so I'm sure it came from a great place, but I think I've heard people refer to it as love coming out sideways. It seemed like her maternal instinct kind of ran riot, and she went into that devouring mother archetypal realm. So can you tell us a little bit about what made Doris tick in that respect, as far as going further than what you were talking about, into the point where she's like isolating him, from socialization, period?
It all came down to she wanted to control what he experienced, because her one hope was, we're going to fix him. One day we're going to fix him. So until then, if I keep him here, if I keep him at home, I can control what he sees, who he interacts with, and he won't grow up living a lie, because when they cure him, he's not going to see all this lie about red and yellow and green and blue and purple. He's going to see the exact same black and white house that he's always lived in. And then when he goes outside of there, then he can see what everything else looks like. But as long as she could control what he was exposed to, then she made every effort to control that, which also kind of leads him down the road that he ends up on, because that control feeds into how he's raised and how he learns to control his environment as a grown-up, which feeds into his experiments and things. He's very rigid. He's very strict. He doesn't have a sense of humor. He doesn't understand that. Everything that he does is very controlled. It's very black and white, like he was raised. Everything is just black and white. There's no gray. There's no red. There's no blue. It's this way and that's it. So.
Yeah, and his mother, like, if she was to wear the red lipstick, he would still see that as black, right? Or something like that?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I don't know, when I was reading the book, I was starting to think, you can even tell kind of by the decor of my live stream page, is I'm kind of partial to, these are some light colors, but I like, black, blue. I think I kind of create sort of a monochrome world for myself.
Yeah.
But you have quite a few fans here. We got Katrina.
Those are my children.
Oh, these are your children. Okay, Katrina, Candace, Ashanti.
Yep.
And yeah, we got Sally too. All right. Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Well, your next story, Roxy's List, is about the marriage of Joe and Roxy Marshall, a couple very much in love. However, Joe allowed himself to get stuck in a rut and didn't take the time to live life with his wife and travel the world with her while she was still alive. So it's a story of regret, but ultimately redemption. And yet you managed to weave in a hefty helping of cold-blooded revenge, which was very nice. Well done. Well played. Well, so the idea of a man dispensing justice while paying his respects to his wife was very poetic. What kind of feelings did this story evoke in you while you wrote it? And what are some story elements that you think are dark yet beautiful, which very few people write about in that way?
That's a loaded one. I think with that one, I wanted everyone to know that there was more to Joe than what everyone else around him knew. Like, I wanted everyone to know what Roxy knew. Joe was this wonderful man that loved her, that he treated her like a queen. But Joe was also a well-known person in the town in which they lived for many other reasons, none of which were good. And I think I can say this without spoiling it too much, and I think it may even be on the back of it, but Joe is a mob boss. And I like that whole appeal of what if we had a mobster's wife that was purposely kept in the dark about everything her husband was up to because he didn't want her involved, but the whole time she knew. And what does that do to him when he finds out after the wife dies? Which led us to Roxy's List. And it gives him some things that he needed to do to kind of make up for the things that Roxy had missed out on.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is very poetic. It makes you think about the unfortunate life lesson: don't put off spending time with your loved ones because you don't know how much time you have with them.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, has that ever happened to you? Like when you get really immersed in writing and touring, is that something you worry about?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But I think with me, it was more one of those things that occurred before I started to write. There was a lot of things that I had missed out on. When I go to a lot of conventions and things now, I take half of my family with me, if not all of them.
Were they at Texas Author
No, that's the only
okay.
one that they haven't been with me at. They'll be at the Knoxville convention with me next week, and they'll be at the St. Louis convention. So I usually have at least half of them, if not all of them.
Well, I mean, you need an entourage. It's only natural.
Yeah. I make them wear all of my merch, and I make them at my table, and they're my managers, and they keep me sane.
You got like an entire PR team.
Yeah.
Well, Roxy is very much like my wife. She loves true crime shows and podcasts. And I don't know whether I find that cool or terrifying because she's learning all the mistakes not to make when killing your spouse.
Yeah.
So she could probably get away with it. So love you, honey. Are you a true crime junkie? And if so, how much does it inform your work? And would you recommend it to other writers for inspiration and technical detail?
Am I a junkie? I wouldn't necessarily say that. I have watched a lot of it, but nowhere near as much as what a true crime junkie would watch. I was hooked on a lot of NCIS and Law and Order shows and
procedurals.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I do get a lot of my information like that. But I also read a lot of, I suppose it would still be called true crime stories when I was younger, which was weird because I had a morbid fascination with serial killers. And so I actually read a lot of the actual like newspaper articles and documentation and entries and dictionaries and not the dictionary, the encyclopedias and all of that because I just found it. I think I wanted to know what made somebody like that tick. Like, why? Why would you do this? Like, yeah. So, junkie, probably not quite, but have I consumed a lot of it? Yeah. Do I watch a lot more of it now? Yes.
Do you, as far as your writing is concerned, I've heard other people talk about them. Do you go to, I think they're like Facebook groups where you go and you can talk to like police officers, EMTs, if you need like technical details for the way, you know, I mean, if you want to get technical, the way somebody's arrested, somebody's booked into a jail or, you know, something like that?
I do not, but I do a lot of research on my own, and I have quite a few friends that are in many different types of industry. So I have ways to make the connections that I have work. And then if I don't have one, then I usually just hit the internet and look for the most accurate information I can find. And
that sounded a little sinister. I have ways.
You have ways. Now, I will say, when I was writing the Bishop books, I did reach out to a search and rescue team in Anchorage, Alaska. And I spent about 2 months corresponding with one of the men from up there who walked me through like how they do the search and rescue and what the park was like that I actually used in the book and just everything. So that helped me a lot because I've never been to Alaska, let alone know how like search and rescue works, any of that. So that helped me because I did want that to have a true to life, like this is what they do and this is the next step and this is how long they would expect you to wait before, you know, before they actually go out there in the woods, and this is what the environment is like. And so, yeah, nice. I research.
I'm looking in the chat. Katrina says we work for free.
I feed her.
What's that?
I feed her.
Oh, you feed her? I don't know. They might unionize. I don't know what's happening here.
It's my oldest.
Well, your next story, entitled "The Best Puppet Show in Town," paints a picture of the very seedy, gritty setting of a traveling carnival. And it centers around a couple named Patty and Marcus who are attempting to resurrect their dead baby with the help of the carnival fortune teller, known only, I just remember it being Madame, right? She didn't have an official name. Okay.
Right. Madam.
I can't say Madame. Am I putting the emphasis on the wrong syllable?
The Madam. No,
oh, yeah.
Where you're from, I guess. But yeah.
Oh, yeah. I guess she was kind of a madam. Mm-hmm. Well, the price they have to pay is more than they can take. Almost. They go through with it. And the concept of parents doing horrific things in order to bring their child back is illustrated in stories like Pet Sematary. So what is it exactly within the combination of sadness, desperation, and evil that makes the story more compelling than just the strength of those elements added together individually? And I mean like kind of like a synergistic effect, like those three elements, 1 + 1 + 1 = 5 on the horror scale.
Mm-hmm. Without them, you wouldn't have the emotional impact in the story that you have. You would have a story. You would have a disturbing story. or you would have an emotional story without the disturbing aspect. You would have one element without the rest of it, but until you have all three, you're not going to have that true element that you want in there, which is the horrificness of what they're going through, what they're attempting to do, and then that impact of why. So you have to have it all in there, and you have to also make the reader care about why they're doing this. So that story was one of my more bizarre stories. But I still wanted you to care about why they had to go through this, regardless of how bizarre it was, how horrific it was, no matter what this lady was telling them to do. I wanted the reader to understand why they had to do it, or why they felt like they had to do it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was trying to kind of like lay it out in my mind. Like, so you've got the loss of a child, so you've got grief.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got the desperation to bring the child back, so they're willing to do something that's really just, abhorrent to them.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got this understanding of why they would do that, but at the same time, you're like, no, don't do that. And then you've got somebody that's evil taking advantage of them in that vulnerable situation. It's just like this. It's like these flammable ingredients being mixed together.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you look at the story as a whole, it's called The Best Puppet Show in Town. The madam is literally a puppeteer with this man and his wife. She's pulling all their strings, and she knows what they're going to do and why. And she just waits patiently for them to come to her to want to do this. And meanwhile, she's the one pulling all the strings, just like the wife does when she runs her puppet show.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty, I didn't, there was all sorts of little Easter eggs, and I didn't see the ending coming until it hit me over the head. I was like, oh my God, that's, wow, that's not good.
No. That was, I think, one of the most horrific endings I could imagine for that.
Well, as I mentioned, the story paints a dark, gritty picture of the carnival circuit. And I always find the setting of the carnival circuit very neo-noir-esque, if I can use that as a term. It's staffed by vagabonds with no roots and no allegiances. And when it comes to the Midway games, the odds are always in the house's favor. So I'm assuming you've been to a carnival. What is your strangest experience?
Can't really say I have a strange experience at one, but I was raised in a very small town, and we had a fair. And the people that came in with the rides and the games was a traveling carnival. And that's exactly what they were. They were just a ragtag group of people that they had picked up along the way. And when you would go down there to the fair at night, there was always an element of a little bit of fear, a little bit of like mystery surrounding what went on behind the rides and where their campers were, where their tents were. It was always so dark back there, and you weren't allowed back there. And every time you walked down the Midway, you could see, and there were these shady people just kind of standing there, converging and kind of giving you the side eye. It just never looked safe. It just never looked on the up. It was just, every year we had the same group of people, and every year no one was ever the same except like the older 5 that I think owned it. But everyone else was just ragtag people that they picked up along the way, and it just never quite, they never really looked safe. They never really looked sane. either. Like, it was always like, if you looked at them the wrong way, you knew they were just going to cart you off and you were never going to be seen again. I don't know. I was 16, 13 at the time. I grew up with this. So your mind goes to weird places when you're younger.
Did they have rides like roller coasters and stuff?
So a lot of the rides are the ones that just went round. Ferris wheel and stuff.
I always wonder, like the bigger ones, like how many times have they put those together and taken them apart and then put them, at some point they've got to have put them together and had parts left over and been like,
for sure. What's this?
Yeah, we don't need that.
We don't need that. It's fine.
That's what I'm always worried about.
Just hold real tight to the bar. It's okay.
That's what the safety harness is for. Yeah. Oh, God. Well, circling back to the book, the process that Madam puts Patty and Marcus through is about as fantastical, bizarre, and terrifying as they come. It seemed like the kind of thing that an author might have culled from a nightmare. Did you get this scene, or do you ever get story ideas from nightmares? And if so, could you tell us about them?
Fun fact. So I don't really have a lot of nightmares now that I remember. But the first 2 novels that I wrote were actually written about the nightmares I had as a child, which is literally what the story is based on. The main character ends up in this world that is ripped from her childhood nightmares. But for this particular story and the ones that I write now, oddly enough, I get most of my ideas from my kids, and they'll tell you in the chat that that's true. But
ladies,
this whole concept, the process came from something that my oldest used to say to me. And it was always like, sometimes I just want to hug you. I just want to unzip you and crawl inside you and hug you and never let go. It was something along those lines. And I just had this image of, what if you could just, why not?
Let's roll those dice. Let's see what happens.
And then it just got really weird from there.
Katrina says verified. Yes. All right. Gotcha. Well, your next story, entitled In the Garden, centers around a woman named, is it Irina? Mm-hmm. Irina, her narcissistic neighbor Dolores, Dolores's resentful husband Dirk, and Dolores's invalid mother Esther. And Irina liked to take out the trash, literally and figuratively, and she buried a lot of trash in her backyard, which gave her a lush green lawn and beautiful flowers, much to the chagrin of Dolores, who was desperate to win the neighborhood battle of the backyards. And this story illustrates that even at the level of a competition in a suburban neighborhood, people still resort to ruthless tactics to achieve power. So I like to refer to people like Dolores as suburban sociopaths. Yes. And my wife used to do competitive cheer when she was around 10 years old, I think. So she got to experience, I don't know if you've ever seen those shows with, she got to experience the sociopathic cheer moms. So what is the strangest place you've ever come in contact with a power-hungry person?
Oh, everywhere. My whole life. I know some people like that quite well, personally. In school, we had the whole competitive dance teams and cheer. I got to see a lot of them and their moms do what they do. I had a job a while ago, about 10 years ago, where one of the employees was very much motivated, to say the least. And it was interesting to watch her go through from being a normal, here's just an employee, and then suddenly she's like the manager, and we're just looking around like, what happened? I work with a few of those types now. So.
Oh, okay.
They're everywhere.
I need names. No, I'm just playing. Just kidding.
No. Um, I think it makes the world a sort of an interesting place. But I also think there's a special place in hell for a lot of those folks. And I had this thought too. So when you sent me the questions earlier today, I was reading them over and I got to this one and I just started to laugh because I also think there should be a special brand of jail or prisons for these people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they didn't really kill anybody. They're not murderers per se, but they shouldn't be with the rest of us.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like we should be able to vote them off the island and be like, listen, this is what you've been doing. No.
And she was the head of the homeowners association.
Yeah.
See, I've never owned a home, so I've never had the pleasure of dealing with that.
Yeah, so some of them can be a nightmare. They're super strict. There are quite a few that are super strict and they have these rules and a lot of them don't make any sense at all. It's your house. You should be able to do what you want. But there are these homeowners associations where it's like your lawn has to be cut every single week by this by this time frame. And it has to be like an inch. It can be no higher than an inch. And your mailbox has to be this exact mailbox in like beige, and your patio furniture has to be this exact patio furniture, and it can only be brown or black. You cannot have red. You cannot have blue. Like they have these really insane rules sometimes that you're just not allowed to do what other people do on other streets. Just like, we want it to look nice and we don't approve. And this lady, I kind of toyed with that whole thing and I gave it to her and just let her go nuts. As you can see in the story, she's very controlling because she doesn't think of herself as, I'm a volunteer at this job. This is her kingdom. This is her, like, she owns this block. It's not just her house. She owns it. And she takes that to heart. And it's like she rules by fear rather than, what a sane person would do.
And I mean, you do have a certain level of power being, I guess, the head of the homeowners association, but it's such low stakes. It's not like you're, a congresswoman or something like that.
No,
it's just you're letting like this tiny bit get to your head.
And you're stressing yourself out over, oh my God, they bought a black mailbox instead of the beige one.
Yeah.
Who cares? I wouldn't care, but hey.
Well, she was pretty bad all the way around. She treated her husband, Dirk, like her personal servant and her own mother like an annoying dog chained up in the room upstairs. I don't think she was chained up, but, kind of...
Not technically, but she also couldn't get around very well. So
yeah, so she was kind of handicapped, chained up because of her handicap, so to speak. And she didn't even feed her mother the same food that her and her husband ate. So Esther, the mother, seemed like a good person, but there was some ambiguous mention about the way she raised Dolores possibly being to blame for her behavior. So is there a backstory to her childhood?
Oh, of course. Yeah. It's implied because every person has a backstory. Something made them the way they are. Something gave them the mindset they have and the attitude they have and the fears and the insecurities and the resentments that they have. And all that kind of grows in you as you grow and it shapes who you are. So yeah, her childhood was not, hey, her mother wanted it to kind of seem that way. But by the time the mother sort of realized it was sort of too late. And when she tried to fix it, it was too late to save what had already happened to Dolores's mental state. So neither one of them, well, Dolores was an awful human being, but there was a reason for her being that way. And there was a reason in her mind for why she was treating her mother that way. But her mother wanted to sort of fool herself into, well, you had a great life and you had this and that and the other, because she wasn't so willing to admit what had really happened to her. even though she knew, but she was denying it to herself because, no one wants to admit certain things that we have to hide, even though the mother was the one who took the action. It was still just one of those things, like, we don't talk about that. You had a great life and you had a great childhood and you should be this way. But Dolores had a reason for why she was being that way and why she was treating the mother that way, even though the mother technically wasn't a bad human. She just made some bad choices.
Mm-hmm. So you just you left it up to the reader to kind of fill in the blanks of what possibly happened in her childhood, or do you have like a concrete?
It's sort of implied in there.
Okay.
I didn't write it out because I didn't think it really had to, but it is definitely implied. And if you read it's more like there's a moment at the end that I think kind of reveals what happened.
I'm going to have to reread that. I thought I read that pretty solidly. It's my old age.
It's sort of one of those, you kind of got to connect the dots a little bit, sort of read between the lines, but it's in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Will do. I will report back to you.
You have to have empathy, right? Like you have to have folks in these stories that have gone through real situations, that have gone through things in life that your readers go through, that your readers can relate to. So you have these people that we hate and we have these absolute monsters, but what made them that way? Or is there a good side to the monster that everyone else thinks, like Joe and Roxy? Like, you have to make them more than what everyone else thinks they are, because that came from somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, Sally is not a fan. She said she hated Dolores, and hated is in all caps. Very, very loud.
Several times from Sally.
Well, the story has a very satisfying and what I would call happy ending. So what determines whether a story has a happy, bittersweet, or dark, soul-crushing ending? How does that element evolve for you? Do you just kind of feel it as you...
Yeah, it's what the story needs. A lot of mine, I don't really plan mine out. They just unfold mentally. And normally it's the people in the story that tell me what ending they want. I don't know if that makes sense, but if you're an author, it kind of makes sense, because a lot of us, our people in the story are telling us the story as we're writing it. We're just a vessel. And it's like they become real for that moment in time that we're writing their story. And I've changed entire plot lines because my character was like, you know what? No, I don't like this. I wanted to go here. And I'm like, all right, so you just go there and that's the ending. And okay, it works. So I think that one needed to have more of a happy-ish ending.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to kind of piggyback off of what you were saying, I've heard many people say that the only time they get writer's block is when they're trying to get their characters to do something that they don't want to do.
They don't want to do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like having multiple personalities. These little subsects of your psyche that just run rampant. Well, your next story, entitled All in Due Time, was about a man named Grant who gave off some very nihilistic yuppie vibes with his polished appearance and corporate job. I kind of thought about like Patrick Bateman-ish, something like that.
Yeah.
He had the patience of a sociopath, but had an inner demon that could only be kept in check for so long. And in the story, it says that Grant's father was a strict disciplinarian that taught him patience, basically. So I was thinking about this. This might be really spoilery, so feel free to pass if you like. But was his inner demon literal, or was it the figurative result of his father's programming?
Both.
Both?
If that helps you at all. So yeah, it's gonna be a bit of a
Too spoilery?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's just go with his inner demon was an absolute result of how he was raised. That became more real as time went on. We'll have to leave it there with that one. Or we're gonna run it for everybody.
Listeners at home, you've got to find out for yourself.
You've got to read it.
Well, your final story, Corpse in the Corn, tells the tale of a young woman named Jessie who lived on a farm with her father. And from a very young age, she was trained by her father to work the farm, and he also ensured she was surrounded by church-going ladies who taught her the ways of homesteading. Her mother died in childbirth, and her father never remarried because he believed that no one could replace Jessie's mother. It seemed to imply that Jessie was missing something by not having a stepmother, and if that was true, what was she missing? Because there was a lot of varying elements that kind of shaped her very interesting personality.
Well, so we're talking about the very early 1900s, raised in a brand new farming community, maybe 25 houses in all. They're all farmland. We have like a main street. So very old-fashioned homesteaders, you know. What was she missing? That softer touch. Even though he tried to replace that with the women in town that were willing to help out and that came over to the house every day and they homeschooled her and all of those finer arts, they weren't there permanently in her life to kind of give her that motherly touch, though. She wasn't raised with that sort of gentle, womanly, expected sort of nursing and maternal and, you know, just very calming and very gentle. She was raised by a rugged farmer. He spent his whole life outside. He raised most of the meat for the town, and he had one child to help him with the farm work. He raised her the best he could, and he was a great dad, but he was a very rugged, very stern man who only knew one way of life, and she had to grow up and learn both ways, but she needed to be the sort of the son that he didn't have also because she needed to help run the farm, which she learned how to do at a very young age, which I think helped sort of shape her personality the older she got too, because she was not gentle. She was not, you know, that softer, squeamish, oh no, look at the blood. Like she was like, it's just a pig.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Like, let's get it on.
Yeah.
Let's
so
murder something.
She was definitely a unique young woman in a town of dainty little women that were raised that way to be that expected, what we wanted a woman to be at that time. You know, you're supposed to learn how to knit and learn how to sew, and you're supposed to learn nursing skills, and you're supposed to learn how to cook, and you're supposed to, you know, if you want a job, you're going to be the teacher at the local schoolhouse. You know, all those more gentler things. And it was the men that did the outside work and did the farming and the butchering and the slaughtering, except for Jessie.
Yeah.
Jessie was an enigma in this town.
Mm-hmm. So if she had a stepmom, a woman actually living there, maybe she would have, I don't know, been kind of like a buffer, like when Jessie came from the barn covered in blood and viscera. Like, sweetheart, you need to clean yourself. You look like you just murdered somebody.
Or maybe the stepmom would have been like, hey, honey, to her husband at night, maybe we should hire, you know, the Jones twins after school to help.
Oh, yeah. Gotcha.
Maybe Jessie shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, I think possibly that was a bad idea. Well, one morning, the town wakes up to the news of a murder 2 counties away, and soon after, a body is found face down among the rows of corn on Jessie and her father's farm. The heads of the victims are smashed and their bodies are eviscerated. And when people express concern about Jessie being exposed to the violent aftermath of the murder, her father always quells the outcry by mentioning how much blood and gore Jessie encounters daily, as we've been talking about, while slaughtering hogs on the farm. So, was her father unknowingly highlighting that Jessie had been systematically desensitized to extreme violence? And how did the fact that Jessie's mother had died while giving birth to her affect her? Because she had quite a few really intense things affecting her psyche in the past and on a daily basis.
Was he unknowingly? No, he was just a very strict, straight up, matter of fact man. He was like, yeah, but blood is blood, and Jessie's been raised on this her whole life. Like, when he had to go out to the farm, let's say Jesse's 2 or 3 years old, and he had to go outside to slaughter the hogs, he didn't have a wife there watching her. Jesse had to come and sit outside while he did what he did. Like, she was literally raised on this whole act of animals, being killed and slaughtered and raised. And this is just a natural course of life. This was just natural to her. So for her to see a slaughtered person in his mind was no different than her seeing a slaughtered hog or even her slaughtering a hog herself. She does this day in and day out. So for her to see a corpse of a human in that way would have less of an impact on her than, say, the headmistress at the school. Because Jesse's just like, all right.
Yeah.
Different lifestyle.
Yeah. Well, I won't go any further into the book, but I highly recommend it. Listeners at home, buy it, read it, and review it. And I was looking through your bio. One of the things I noticed was that we share a love of libraries. Usually when I ask authors which they find more magical, libraries or retail bookstores, they always say retail bookstores. Which do you find more magical and enticing, and why?
A library.
Library.
The older it is, the happier I am. Libraries. The smell, there's nothing like it. A retail bookstore cannot recreate that smell. Now they all smell like Starbucks and cake pops and leather chairs.
Uh-huh.
When I was younger, we had a library we went to, and it was in this old sort of Victorian style architecture sort of place, and it had like 3 floors, and everything was just old wood and polish and tile floors and just leather and fireplaces. And then the books were so old, and they had just the leather bound ones on the shelf as far as you could see, and the parchment style pages, and like they had really old books in there. And I just, it was my favorite place. I would go, well, the kids section was on the first floor, but I had outgrown the kids section by the time I was like 8. So I would go upstairs and just wander, just the tall stacks, and literally I would pull the books out and smell them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I would sit on the floor and I would just page through and I would read them. And my mom would come find me 20 minutes later. I'm like, I want these. And I have like 12 books in my arms. And she's like, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was talking with, I can't remember who it was, but he reminded me, they don't do this anymore, but back in the day, you remember when they used to have those passports, like those cards stuck in the back where you could see the person's name? You'd be like, oh, that's Frank had this. And then you start looking through it and you're like, oh.
Our library had those. And I used to love that. That would be the first thing I would look at to see who checked out the book. Because a lot of those books they're so long that sometimes if you looked at the older ones, you would see books that had been checked out like 50 years ago. It's like, wow. It's this little walk through past, even though you didn't know who any of these folks were. I used to like make up stories about who they were or why they checked out the book. Or, I don't know. That was one of my favorite parts, was checking out the library card to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, you write across a broad range of genres, from fantasy to horror, romance, suspense, and even extreme horror. Which genre do you find the most challenging to write, and which is the most therapeutic?
Romance, I don't do. I do everything else. Which is the most therapeutic? It would depend on my mood. So if I'm angry when I'm writing something, chances are you're going to get extreme or splatterpunk or something like that. A lot of it depends on what the story is. If I'm writing it for an anthology piece and what it is that they want, or if I'm writing one of my own stories, which one of my children gave me the idea, or if it's one of my own ideas. There's a little bit of a thought process that goes into each one, but I think a lot of it depends on my mood as I write and the tone. So,
Okay. Oh, and Sally said she is also Team Library, just
yes,
so you
she
know.
is. We've had this talk.
Well, tell me about your indie press, and I'm going to bring it up here. Uncomfortably Dark.
Yes.
We are welcome to Uncomfortably Dark. Tell me about this.
Well, that's a monster. So the evolution of me in the last five years is what you're looking at. This started as a indie horror review platform that it was just me. And I created a website for me to have an online home, of course, because if you're going to be a writer, people need to find you. So I had a website for me. And I knew I wanted to have a brand. So Uncomfortably Dark was the brand and the logo. And at first, it was just me doing reviews and interviews and things like that to sort of bring more attention to the indie world. But as I grew in the indie world, and made more of a name, then the website itself also grew. And the more people wanted me to write, and the more invites I had for different anthologies and different stories, I didn't have quite as much time. So I needed a review team. So enter, my whole 6-person review team that I now have, that we review between 8 to 12 indie horror books a week now. They post all their reviews on the blog. I do indie author promotions sometime on the homepage. And then last winter, I decided, okay, let's add something else because, I have so much free time. So I decided to become a publisher too and give that a shot. So now we are Indie Press.
Gotcha.
So that's why you see the website the way it is now. And it's a indie press as well as a indie horror community support platform as well, because we still 100%, we are here for the indie world. We do interviews and new release interviews and features and promotions and all that free. And, you want it on there, you just have to ask, but hey, here you go.
Yeah, I'm trying to get down to your Patreon here, but it keeps on adding more stuff. It's like never ending.
Yeah.
You got quite a bunch of stuff on here. While I do that, tell me about your Patreon and what's available.
Patreon, there's so much on there, and I think I overcomplicated it. But if you join, you're going to get access to early exclusives. You're going to get access to a story that I write kind of live on there each week. And then once I complete it, then everyone who is joined gets a copy of it for free, and that's regardless of how much you pay each month. Everybody that is on there gets that one free, signed, sealed, delivered. Here you go. We do interviews, we do exclusives, and now that we're a publishing house too, you get to see essays and things like that from my authors. You get to see the cover reveals first. You get merch. You get pretty much access to everything that we have ahead of everyone else. And then you can join at either the $3 level, $5, $7, and I think there's 15 and 20, which will also get you pretty much everything that we release all year long.
Oh, there's an uncomfortably dark deviant.
There
All
sure
right.
is.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good. Get back in here. Well, let's see. You also offer a service for indie authors called 360 Editing, which is an editing service. Is that, can you tell us a little bit about it? And is it like a separate from your Uncomfortably Dark?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that is an editing company that I run. It's 360 editing for two reasons, because you get all of it. It's not just line edits or copy edits or development edits. You get all of it, all in one. And the max rate that any indie author will pay up to 100,000 words per job is $360. It cuts off. Like, I will not charge anyone over that. That is the max rate. And the concept behind that was, when I started, I was looking for editors and I was looking at what I could afford and what these editors were charging. And there was no way. Like, I had people give me quotes of like $1,500 for an edit for a 60,000 word story. And I was like, I'm not even going to make that back. Like, especially when you're new, like, you're new. No one knows who you are yet. You don't have a name yet. It's not like you're getting hundreds of dollars every month in sales that you can afford to pay $1,500 for an edit job or $900 or whatever it is. And the number one complaint that reviewers and readers leave in all the Facebook groups and on Goodreads for the indie world is editing. The book was good. The story was good. I wish they had gotten an editor. There were so many mistakes that pulled me out of the story, on and on and on. I wanted to try to offer some way to kind of help that and to give a new author a way to afford an editor that wasn't going to charge them an arm and a leg, that knew what they were doing. So, and it wasn't just, hey, I'm going to become an editor. I worked for a year and a half under some other indie presses for free and learned from them and from their editing teams and all that. And I edited for them all that time for free. And I learned, and they sent me stuff back. And they're like, no, it needs to be like this. And you missed this. And like, I took the time to learn how to do it, what they expected out of a professional editing job. I learned the difference between what a line edit was and what a developmental edit was and all of that. And like, there's different things that you have to know what goes into the actual job. I spent the time to learn it all. I started offering it for free again to some indie authors that I knew for another year. And I would ask them, tell me if you're okay with this. Like, did I miss anything? Give me feedback. Let me know what I missed. Because I didn't want them to be like, oh, yeah, it's good. But it wasn't. Like, I was asking them, tell me what I missed. Like, you need to go over this and let me know. Like, are you okay with this? Are you happy with this? And from that, like, I learned and I learned and I learned. And now I have this, and it's been doing pretty well. And I edit for quite a few indie authors now, and yeah, I like it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, for you personally, I mean, you're involved in just a multifaceted writing career. Is there anything you avoid because you feel it stifles your creativity?
Like what?
Oh, I don't know. Some people like the most probably the most interesting one that I've heard so far is they said that they avoid writing craft books, which I thought was odd. Books on how to write.
They avoid writing them or reading them?
Reading them.
I don't think that would stifle your writing creativity. That would only help you.
Yeah. That's why I thought it was strange.
No, but I will say that if I know I'm going to write about a certain subject, werewolves, just to pull one out, if I know I'm going to write about it, at some point, I won't read anything written by anyone in the indie world or otherwise about a werewolf. I won't watch a werewolf movie or show because I don't want to unconsciously, as I'm writing, take bits from something I saw recently or read recently, but like, oh, that works. And then all of that gets jumbled up in there. Like, I don't want to have that in my head when I'm trying to write my own. So I will actively not watch something that has to do with something I'm currently working on, or I won't read it. It just kind of helps me to kind of feel like I'm writing what I had in my head and my original idea, and not unconsciously taking bits from something I just read or something I just saw. So I do that, but nothing really stifles it. I do not scroll online anymore.
No doom scrolling.
No. I spend maybe 5-10 minutes a day on Twitter, TikTok, Facebook. I post the posts that I have to post. I engage as much as I can in that time frame on reader posts only, reader book related posts, put it that way. So author posts, book related posts. I don't engage with anything else. I don't engage with the drama and the pettiness and the politics. And I don't do that. I don't have time. I don't engage. And I feel like you get sucked into all of that stuff so easily. And the next thing you know, you're being crucified because you had an opinion that, person A over here didn't like, or person B over there didn't like. And I don't have time to argue with you online. I don't care. I don't do that because at my age, I'm not in high school anymore. I graduated a long time ago. I don't do the petty back and forth and, hey, I'm going to argue with you online because you said something I don't like. I don't care. You can have an opinion. I have an opinion. You have an opinion. That's great. That's what makes us people. We have different opinions. I don't engage in any of that. Nor do I have time. Like, I have a day job as well. Like, I have an actual job as well as all of this. I literally don't have time to scroll and to get involved in that stuff. I work for me. I work for the people I'm editing for, and I work for my authors that I have signed. That is my day. And Sally's saying I don't sleep. Yeah, I don't. I don't sleep much. Not much.
Yeah. I mean, with your love of the written word, even though you don't sleep and your time is occupied, you're still in heaven, I would assume.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I absolutely love what I do. And yeah, it has days where I'm just like, no one cares what I'm doing. Like, no one's reading this stuff. No one's like, it's hard not to get in your own head and feel like you're doing all this work and no one's paying attention, or no one's listening, or no one's reading it anymore. But I just keep working, if that makes sense, which is also another reason why I don't scroll. So I don't see everyone else having that bad day, having that mindset. Because when you see so much of it you tend to get in your own head about it too. And that whole imposter syndrome kicks in, and it's like, I should just quit. Like, no one's reading this. No one cares what I do. No one out here would blink an eye if I never wrote another word, and you can't tell yourself that, even if you have a month where no one buys one book, no one goes on the website. I'm doing this because this is my only dream. This is the only thing I ever wanted to do with my entire life, from childhood all the way till now. This has been my only dream. I'm doing this for me before I'm doing it for anyone else. And when I have those days, that's what I think. I'm writing it for me before I'm writing it for everyone else, because this is my dream. This is what I want to do. And if one thing I write reaches one person and they take something out of it, then that's enough. So,
mic drop.
Yeah.
Very nice. Well, just had an idea occurred to me. We have got a full chat room. Would you be open to taking a phone call?
A phone call.
A phone call.
Sure. If someone wants to call in, or if they want to type questions, I guess. I don't know.
Let's see here. You open up the phone line. If somebody would like to call in and tell Candace how awesome she is, or, tell her how much they enjoyed the book, something like that. And while we wait, just out of curiosity, I know you probably don't have time to watch movies almost, but do you like watching horror movies?
That's all I watch. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So have you seen Late Night with the Devil?
Yes.
Okay. What did you think of it?
Meh.
Yeah.
Meh.
See, it seemed like I totally understand why Stephen King had such a high opinion of it, because it seems like a story from kind of that era. You know what I mean?
Mm.
You don't agree?
No, I do.
Oh, okay.
I think it could have been one of his own stories.
Okay.
I liked the storyline. I enjoyed the concept of the movie. There were some elements in how they filmed the movie that kind of pulled me out of it a little bit. And I was like, okay. And I'm sure you know what I mean. I'm like, because it's been online and everyone's been talking about it. And when I got to that moment, I was just like,
just a little underwhelmed.
It just pulled me out of it just enough that it kind of ruined that immersive, like, believability that I like so much in a horror movie. And I'm sure not everyone agrees with me, and that's fine. That's just me. I like a movie that I can kind of get lost in and feel like I'm fully immersed in it. And when that one scene happened, it kind of pulled me all the way out of it to where I was like, no, okay. All right.
Yeah.
It was an enjoyable watch. I would not tell anyone to not watch it at all. It was well done. It was an enjoyable storyline. It was a nice, fun movie to watch on a late night, which for me is all I'm really looking for in a horror movie. So.
All righty. Well, I guess everybody's going to be shy. So
no one wants to call me, so.
Oh, yeah. You guys.
I guess no one wants to chat. Missed opportunity, man. I'll tell you.
I know. I mean, I've got like royalty here at your disposal. Just an open ear from a very talented writer. But I guess let's move to the final question here. You kind of filled in some gaps here and there, but just to give us an overall picture, what is the life of Candace Nola like outside of writing?
Candace Nola doesn't leave her house. Wow.
No. Hang on. Let's see what's happening here. Hello.
Hello. I was calling in for the live with Candace.
Who is this now?
Ashante.
Ashante. Who is Ashante, Candace?
My daughter.
And how many do you have? How many kids?
Three.
Three.
Two of them are in the chat. So Katrina and Ashante are my children.
Where is she in the age range?
She's the middle.
She's the middle. Okay, well.
Yeah, I'm the middle one.
And Katrina's the oldest one. And then I have a teenage son.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, nice to meet you, Ashanti. What are you up to besides watching your cool mom on a live stream?
That's it.
That's
I don't
it?
have an exciting life.
I mean, you don't really need any more than that.
No, I have a great mom over there who writes amazing books.
Hell
and
yeah.
everyone reads them. And there will be a riot if she ever thinks about stopping.
Oh, a full-on riot. Like, are we talking Molotov cocktails?
On.
So here's a fun fact. The one you're talking to right now who's currently choosing violence does not watch horror movies. She does not like horror-related things. But the story, It's So Pretty, in my collection was her idea.
Oh, really?
Sure was.
Yeah.
You've got something underneath the surface.
Oh, yeah.
You're like a ticking time bomb, I think.
She is my mom.
Several of my books have been her ideas.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, what's your favorite of your mom's work?
Probably her first one, Breach, because that one's not as scary, and I can read it.
It's not as scary. Is it more of like a kind of a comfort horror art house, something like that?
It's
yeah, I like the sci-fi sort of stuff and like the fantasy world. So like that's more my alley of books. Her other stuff, I listen to her talk about it all day. I'll give her plenty of ideas. I don't think I can have those images in my head, though.
Just can't get it out.
Like, I can't do it.
Awesome. Well,
she's amazing, and that's all I wanted to say. I'm going to go back to watching you guys now.
Okay, well, I appreciate the interaction. Thank you for calling in.
Of course. Bye.
See you. Good call. Good call.
There you have it.
All right. Well, we got one in. Well, I forget where exactly you were. You were talking about, you said you never leave your house.
I never leave my house. That's almost true. The last couple of years, I was actually lucky enough to work at home 100% of the time for my actual job. So combined with that, and then the writing, the editing, the conventions and everything else, like I literally don't leave my house. Now I have to work part-time in the office. So a couple of days a week, I'm at home. A couple of days a week, I'm downtown. And aside from that, I don't leave my house. I'm in front of my computer pretty much all day, every day, every hour that I'm not doing my day job. I'm in front of this computer, writing and editing and working and doing updates on the website. And I have my other personal website also that I have a blog on that I post reviews on and essays on and things like that on. So there's always something that I'm doing. When I get home from work, usually between like 4 and 5, I take a break for like an hour and a half, hang out with my son, make him whatever he wants to eat, which is typically tacos or pizza. And then I come in here and I work the rest of the night.
Oh, I can get down with tacos and pizza. Sounds good.
Yeah, well.
All right. Well, Candace, it has been a pleasure talking with you.
You too. It's been fun.
Well, as we bring the show to a close, is there anything you'd like to plug or let your readers know about? Something you want to reiterate?
So my collection dropped yesterday. Was that yesterday? God, it seems like a week ago. So we have Demons in My Bloodstream right here. You can get that anywhere that books are sold. You can go on the website and order pretty much anything that I have or that anyone from my publishing house has, and we'll send them out to you signed. You can sign up for the newsletter and get a free book or 2 or 3. Sign up for the Patreon and see what we have. And appearances will be at the TBR Con in Knoxville next weekend. That is September 5th and 6th, I believe, are the dates. Friday and Saturday next weekend will be in Knoxville. September 13th, I'll be in Brownsville, Pennsylvania for Brownsville Screams. And that's kind of cool because it's on Friday the 13th.
Nice.
So we'll be there. And then I'll be at AuthorCon for the first weekend in October in St. Louis for Scares That Care AuthorCon 4. So we'll be there. And then I think the events are done for the year.
Yeah, I mean, you have a whole list of them on your website. So, yeah, we'll definitely have a link for that. Did I cut you off? Was there more?
No, I think that's all. I mean, you can find me anywhere now. I'm on Twitter, Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, Facebook. I have my own group on Facebook as well, Uncomfortably Dark Disciples. And if you really like our brand or our logo, we have merch, we have t-shirts, we have all of that. So come on and join us.
All right. And let's see here. Sally, Justin, Katrina, Ashanti. Oh, do we have another Candace? Benjamin.
That's me.
Oh, that's you talking. Okay. I just want to make sure I got everybody here. Danielle. Yes, thank you all for tuning in. And listeners at home, all links will be in the description. And Candace, thank you again for joining me.
Thanks for inviting me.
And thank you to everyone who tuned in. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you can watch the episodes live. Be sure to tune in every Tuesday for a new episode featuring the best and brightest writers and filmmakers of dark literature and film. So until then, stay healthy, stay sane, and as always, thank you for listening. See you next time.